Good afternoon, everyone. This is Toni Weel on another beautiful Thursday from Florida. I don't even know if it rains or if the sun shines. Probably both, like it has been the last few weeks. My garden absolutely adores it. It's like very, very lush, including the not so welcomed plants that I did not plant it. It's actually interesting to look at what exactly it is, to see if it's, if we can use it or if I can use it. But anyway, we have with us today Gary Parent and Tad Chatham, and of course, Sarah. And I see we lost Sarah again. Oh, okay. Well, we had Sarah on, so I'm sure she will be back. Um, we also have a guest coming on, so I'm going to let him in soon. And I want to talk a little about what we did last week. Unexpectedly, we started talking about EFT with a guest who had issues with her healing. And Gary figured out that intuitively it had a lot to do with shame and guilt. So he practiced EFT, emotional freedom technique, with her, and it was helping her right away. So that was pretty amazing. And I would suggest everyone to please go back to it. You can use this for yourself, even with the same wording, because we all struggle, even, it doesn't matter what age you are, still with traumas that happened in your life. And we all do deal with a lot of shame and guilt. And when Gary was using these words last week, and even just before we opened up here, and I had to think about, how I felt about the things that happened in my life. And yeah, it is a big part of that is shame and guilt, and it's there, and we can eliminate it. So last week's title has been changed to eliminating shame and guilt through EFT. So I suggest, yes, please do watch it. It's very it's absolutely great, and everyone can do this. Okay, today we have Michael, who is going to join us and ask questions. And then we have a few more questions that we didn't get to last week, so I hope we can do that this time. So let me see. I just added Michael and see if he can have his sound and such worked out. Not so far. So until we get to Michael, let's talk about a few of the questions that we got in. And one was actually about dry brushing. I have to admit, I haven't done it yet. And don't ask me why, because I don't even know, but I will. But the question was, why am I getting a headache after dry brushing? Who wants to answer this?
Do you want to take that, Thad?
Oh, I can. Oh,
Yep.
the first thing that comes to my mind is that you are I guess I can say aggressively, or depending on how much brushing you do at a time, depending on how stagnant your circulatory system is, especially in your skin and your body. Depending on how much experience you have doing it, the dry brushing techniques, you could be stirring up so much, lymphatic waste, so quickly in your system that it's creating it to break free, and then it can cause you to have a headache in a way. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's just kind of the same way as how sometimes people can smell certain toxic smells, like perfumes or different things, and that can cause them to have a headache because it's kind of like the body's response towards, those toxins that they're exposed to at that moment. And when you do any kind of body work, that really, it breaks free those toxins that can be kind of stagnant in the tissues. And so that's why I explain to people that you have to be careful, getting lots of massages or dry skin brushing aggressively, um, and things as such, when your body is kind of congested and stagnant, because you can get edema. You can get edema and swelling, and some people get it easier than others. It just depends on the individual. And so that's the first thing that comes to my mind, how I would answer that question.
Okay, great. Do you want to add anything, Sarah or Gary?
Well, I will, but I just wondered if Sarah wanted to. I didn't know she was back.
Feedback.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
back. No, I agree
Okay.
with Thad. I do agree with Thad. I know I talked in the past about getting kind of more intensive massages. And yeah, I can remember getting headaches after those too. And so I have slowed down on how intensive them before because it feels good at the time because, you're in a lot of pain. But
Yep.
in the aftermath of them, though, there could be more damage done than benefit. So, yep, I agree with that.
And lastly, it could also be something that you experience, the next day, not just the same day that you have those types of body procedures. It can even happen after you get out of a sauna or a cold plunge, or a hot and cold plunge, like getting into a sauna and then getting into a cold plunge and then getting into a sauna afterwards. That's because you are creating you're creating a tightening and a relaxing effect of the lymphatic system by going into hot and cold. So it's kind of like it's just stirring up waste. So anytime you do that, it can make you sometimes feel those symptoms. But in a way though, that's a good thing because it's showing you that your body's being able to move that stuff around pretty easily. Sometimes people, they can do that stuff and their body doesn't really respond that well because things are so stagnant and their system is so weak. So we'll leave it at that so we can move on. And I see that Michael, or go ahead, Gary. Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to say was when you're doing your lymphatic brushing, open your 6 lymphatic gates first. So number 1 is right next to your neck above your collarbone and right below the collarbone. Okay. And we just rub on that and we tap it. Okay. This is gate number 1. All lymph from the feet has to travel up through the body and go into this first gate. And if they're having head issues, okay, go to the second gate, which is right behind the earlobe, just above the jaw. There's a little hole there. That's the largest lymph node in the neck. If these areas are sore, they're congested, which means it's backing up. Okay, it's backing up, or this is open and this is close and it can't get in, and it's backing up in the head and it's causing pressure. And so if you learn to open your 6 lymphatic gates first, then that might not happen. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but it's probably not going to, because you'll be able to get down through the system. So it's the largest place for the lymph to travel down through the body after it gets up and is dumped into it. So other than that, keep going.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. We have Michael on, and when I first spoke with Michael, we were talking about the emotions that come up with detoxing, and a lot of fear. And he is actually he was, I don't know if he still is, on grapes. So Michael, please go ahead, ask your question.
I mean, I really don't have any questions right now, but yeah, I have been going like through different emotions and stuff like that, like especially fear. And the funny thing about like the emotions, it feels like they're all like emotions I had in the past, and I haven't really like processed. And yeah, it just comes up, I guess, like when you're finally eating clean, especially fruits, raw, you know, and yeah, it's been, I'm not gonna lie, it's been, taking a toll, but I've been trying to do like the breath work and stuff like that, to keep me calm.
Did you
Okay.
yeah, you watched the video or the podcast from last week.
Hmm.
Did you do the EFT that Gary was doing then?
Yes, I've been doing that every day.
Okay, yeah, you had a question for me, and I didn't really have the answer. Gary, how often should we do that?
Well, you can do it every day, but it's best to bring the emotion up. And remember,
Hmm.
it went in through the breath and you release it through the breath. So inhale is the sympathetic nerve, which is fight or flight. That's the inhale. But we unconsciously draw these fears, these things that limit us.
Hmm.
And so now that we know that, we're consciously now, when somebody says something, we're consciously drawing it into our body. Well, we can consciously release it
Hmm.
because it went in through the breath, so it comes out through the breath. Remember,
Oh,
70% of your detox, if you're breathing properly, is through your breath. So emotional detox is exactly that. When you blow it out, you tell your body,
yeah,
this
right.
does not serve me anymore.
Yeah.
It never has served me. So I choose to let it go. And the way to me, the way the system is set up right now, the food system, the fear campaigns, the political system, and that doesn't mean we should get political here. I'm just saying that everything is fear based now
Yeah.
because when people are grounded in their own wisdom, it's hard to make them do something that goes against their will. But
Hmm.
if you're living in fear, you can send them anywhere you want to go. So our breath is maintaining that, especially for shallow breathing, or we're breathing through the mouth, because that's sympathetic also. But when
Hmm.
we exhale, we can exhale that out, all those emotions. Uh, and believe me, I've been working on this for a long time and I'm still pulling up stuff. So there's a lot from childhood, from birth, basically, right to today. Uh, it doesn't matter how old you are. There's going to be things that happen. They're going to set limitations in your life. So let's do one round of EFT because fear was the word that came up for you. Uh, and you're the one that said it. So I'm not like some guy that goes, well, he's afraid. No, you use that word. So we're going to tap right on the very beginning of the eyebrow. I'm going to take you through the routine here. Here, then the edge of the eyebrow,
Hmm.
and then just below your eye. Okay. And then your upper lip, your right under your bottom lip,
Hmm.
and then your collarbones. This collarbone thing is big when it comes to releasing energies. All right. So
Hmm.
let's start here, up here at the beginning of the eyebrow. So even though I'm afraid,
Even though
you
I'm
repeat
afraid,
after me. And I don't really know why.
and I don't really know why,
I choose to let it go.
I choose to let it go.
I I don't need it.
I don't need it.
I don't want
I don't want it.
it. It's never served me.
It's never served me.
It never will serve me.
It never will serve me.
It was something I was programmed
It was something I was programmed
to accept,
to accept,
and I choose to let it go.
and I choose to let it go.
that programming
that programming
that I inhaled into my life
that I inhaled into my life
was forced upon me
was forced upon me
by a system
by a system
that's only interested in my money.
that's only interested in my money.
That doesn't mean the doctors and the nurses.
That doesn't mean the doctors and the nurses.
It just means the system.
It just means the system.
And I no longer need it.
And I no longer need it.
I no longer want it.
I no longer want it.
I choose to be me,
I choose to be me,
my infinite self.
my infinite self.
I live in a world of abundance,
I live in a world of abundance,
full of infinite potential.
full of infinite potential.
And that's what I choose.
And that's what I choose.
I choose to be infinite
I choose to be infinite
because I am infinite.
because I am infinite.
I was born infinite,
I was born infinite,
and no one can take that away from me.
and no one can take that away from me.
From this day forth,
From this day forth,
I am free
I am free
of all judgment
of all judgment
placed upon me
placed upon me
by those, let me see, let's just a second, by those that choose to instill their fear upon me.
by those who choose to instill their fear upon me.
I don't need their fear,
I don't need their fear,
so I choose to let it go.
so I choose to let it go.
Inhale through the nose and hold it. And blow it out. Tell that, whatever it is in there, tell it to get out. Just go, get out of my body. And every ounce of air that's in your body, release it. And send that out into the universe will take it because it's an imbalance, and the universe is always seeking balance. Earth is always seeking balance. And we are in nature balanced. In the system, we are created to be unbalanced. So as we get closer and closer to nature, I mean, look, they're trying to corrupt nature now. I mean, they're gonna burn 600,000 acres of land up in Canada, and I think what's going to go in is either an AI thing or a GMO forest.
Wow.
So those aren't things that we should fear. This is the new world. It's coming in, and we should be learning it. And we should try to protect nature as much as we can. But the people that are in charge, I mean, they're obviously doing this on purpose because you won't be able to live anywhere unless you're paying for nature and air and water. And so I understand the fear. I have some of it myself, but it's okay to be who you are. Nobody should be telling you who to be or what you should do or healing is a feeling. If we could think ourselves well, nobody would be sick. And it's because we're thinking instead of feeling that we end up being sick or we end up being afraid.
Yeah.
So I think we'll end it right there, but keep your breathing up. Understand that you are the most powerful force on Earth. We all are. We are the collective consciousness of the whole planet. And if we fear, and there's enough of us that fear, then fear will take over the planet. And if we're strong and we're grounded and we are true to ourselves and it's the collective consciousness, the whole world will shift. And it can shift like that. That's what we're seeing happening. More and more people are waking up. People are stepping away from their medical degrees because they're not really helping people. So that's what I would say on that. Would you like to add anything, Sarah, or Toni or Thad?
Yeah, really, the only thing I could add to keep it short and sweet, because Gary gave you a lot to go off of, is that I would put some energy and tension into supporting your kidneys. You know, like I would put your hands on the back of your back where your kidneys and your adrenals are, and send love and compassion to that area and give them permission to let go of that fear that's stagnant in those tissues, you know, because those are the emotions that affect the kidneys. And when you're going through a detox and you're doing things to help, you know, your lymphatic system to drain, you know, you're going to feel those emotions come out, because the draining of the stagnant emotions from your past or from generational trauma that's been passed down from your different family members to you, you know, it can come out during detox. And so that's really a good thing to see. And it's just really a reminder that you don't really have anything to fear. You know, that all fear comes from the original fear of death or not having a fulfilled life. You know, and so those are things really you don't have to have any fear about, because at the end of the day, you know, things are going to happen divinely whether you want them to or not. So you just need to just trust that things are going to go your way, you know, regardless of the outcome, you know, and just try to surrender to it, you know, just live in a grateful state where you're always gratitude and grateful for everything that comes into your way and happens to you, because it's just another opportunity for growth and learning and deeper compassion and understanding and empathy and all these different positive feelings that can tend to help us to keep progressing forward as well. And one last thing I'll mention also too is that, remember, the way that I learned, correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, but the way I learned with EMT or EMF is when you take away a negative charge or a negative emotion that's stored in the body, you want to try to replace it with something positive. And I know that's what you were doing with the way you were wording things and stuff, but you always want to put that intention out there, because sometimes people will focus so much on removing the negative energy or the negative charge, but they won't replace it with something positive. And the way our bodies can have a tendency to be is that we can replace that empty void with something negative again after we remove it, that old stagnant energy. So it's very important to, you know, come up with an analogy in your mind, in your head, you know, and say it out loud verbally, because, you know, words have power, you know, over our physical being, just like our thoughts do too, you know, and as well as our actions. You know, everything you do with the energy you create from your being mentally, speaking, or physically is going to create the reality you experience, because it's the energy you put out is the energy you get back. You know, that's a universal guarantee. You know, it's a universal thing that cannot be disputed, because it's about the way the energetics work and the laws of cause and effect. You know, so those are some things that I could add. And then last thing is, Gary, I always heard with tapping that you're supposed to do it with both fingers, right? Like when you tap the head, the forehead, you're supposed to tap with both fingers, and then under both eyes, and then under the nose, and then on the chin, because of it dealing with both sides of your body, but also with both arms, you know. But I guess you can do it with just one finger too. I'm not saying it's still not effective that way. I'm just saying the way I'd always heard from the practitioners I'd watched and things, they said it's best to use both arms. But I guess you can play around with both ways and see how you feel, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing EFT for about 25 years now, and
Awesome. Yeah.
this is a simpler version.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
if I feel like I need to go deeper, I kind of created it myself. I mean, that it's the same pathways, but this top of the head and the fingers and little finger and here, I found a simpler way that has profound effects on the body. And that If I need to go deeper into it with someone, I will. But this is the one that I use, and I'm looking for electrical charge in certain areas. And I remember working with one girl right here under her nose, top lip, right there. Her whole body would quiver. So that's where that emotion was actually staying. That electrical charge was in her upper lip, and so we're able to get some great movement because of that. But we're always looking for where the triggers are, and then we can work on them through verbal. But the other thing is, doing EFT by yourself will work, but your mind thinks a lot faster than your ability to process it. So if you have a trauma situation from your past and you're tapping and you're doing it yourself, your mind will change the subject before you even know it changed it, so that you can't get to the root cause because it's a limitation, it's a fear. And so getting through that, getting past that, is one of the key things to EFT. And
Yeah, that's
understanding that the breath is
yeah, that's
so
a
important.
yeah, that's a coping mechanism designed
Yeah.
by your body as a reaction to fear. It's kind of like the reaction where you're like, "Oh no, I don't want that to happen," when really you got to surrender again. You got to
Right.
you can't go around fear, you can't go around negative emotion. You have to welcome it, you have to go through it. It's so easy for us as kids when you're so scared of something, you want to avoid it, run away from it,
Mhm.
deflect it, push it away. And it's because it causes shame for a lot of people, and some people can't stand to feel that shame, so they'll have a tendency to
Right.
deflect or push it away or run away from it. And then also, Gary, I was going to add to, I've also seen people have a great response where when you tap underneath the elbow, on the not your forearm, but your arm right there. Yeah, right there. But go a little bit lower, directly underneath your elbow. Yeah, like no down. Right there, yeah, like right there on the backside. They would tap right
Yep.
there on the backside. And the reason why some people would have an emotional response from that is because sometimes our parents psychologically will grab you by your
Oh.
arm right there,
Yeah.
and sometimes they'll do it in a way like, come here, you're misbehaving, when you're younger and
Yep.
stuff. And
Yep.
that sometimes can release, because think of the energy that they put into you when they grabbed you. Because a lot of times people don't realize sometimes how energies can get stored and stagnant in the body from different
Mhm.
behaviors and different things that they do throughout their life. Like, that's why there's an old phrase that says, you never sit down and eat a meal when you're in an emotional release or an
Right.
emotional or emotions coming in. I remember Dr. Jensen said it in one of his books. This is a quote. He said, negative emotions have no place at the dinner table. If you're in an upset conversation with your family, that's not the time to be talking about it at the dinner table. Because you're literally eating those emotions. And you have to then later work on helping those emotions to come back out. Because if they go in and they get stagnant, you got to let them come back out. Because they're not just going to go away on their own a lot of times, especially
Mhm.
if it's in a major event, because that's trapped energy. Because
Mhm.
you have to sometimes, to further understand these subjects, you have to break down the words, and the emotion means energy
Mhm.
in motion. And you
Yeah.
have to, and when you do that, you're like, it's kind of like a light bulb goes off in your mind, and you're like, oh, well, no wonder that's why it's happening. And so yeah, those are some things we can add, but that's all I'll say, so we can move on to other
And
topics and things.
I wanted to add this because this is true with anything where you brought up the food and the emotions, right? So if you make energy and you're in a good mood, right, before you eat your meal, this is master cleansing here. If you just take your hand, you build a little energy, and you take your hand and you put it over the top of it, that energy will change the frequency that's in this liquid to match yours. So when it goes in, if you're saying, just thinking, this is for healing my body, this is for making me stronger, to balance me, to correct anything that is out of balance in my body. That's what's going in that drink. And as you drink it, it is doing that. So this is true with any liquid, by the way. I don't know about alcohol, because that's sugar, but
Yeah, that's
but
that's also why.
that's
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't know if you were not
no,
done.
no, no, go ahead. No, I was
I
done.
was just going to add that's the same reason why people pray over things is it's the same
Yes.
thing. You're putting in a positive intention into the substance, and that's also why people they'll use crystal energy healing and Reiki and different things like that
Yep.
because the energy from the crystals are affecting the meridian channels and the nervous system of the body too because they're
Yeah.
energy as well because the energy that was put into them to create them in the world, that also you can harness and use, and then plus the way that a crystal is formed with its six sides and stuff, that's it does have energy properties to it, and
Yeah.
that's
And,
even been proved by science. They've
yeah.
actually hooked stuff to crystals and saying that's why they use crystals in a lot of like technology and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and we are crystals. We have
Yeah,
crystal compounds all through our skeletal structure. Our pineal gland
that's
is
right. Yeah.
covered with crystals, and it's the motion. That's why breathing is so important. To breathe through your nose. Nice deep breath, and it presses on the primal brainstem and pushes up against the cerebellum, and it moves the pineal gland or a pineal gland, whichever way you want to say that. Pineal means because it's connected to our genitals. Uh,
Well,
and
it's also pineal is from pine cone because the shape of the pineal
yes,
gland looks like a pine
yes,
cone, and you're squeezing when you're doing the breathing, also especially the retaining of the breath and exhaling of the breath.
hmm
You're squeezing the cerebral fluid from your base chakras
hmm
to your crown, and then that makes the crystals. I think they're even like a type of calcium crystals or some type of crystal it's in the makeup of the pineal gland, and it makes them kind of like like kind of compress, and when you do that
yeah,
it kind of makes the pineal gland more active or more responsive, they say.
yeah. There's piezo crystals that are
Yeah.
all over the pineal gland, and so when you're breathing, they start tapping into each other, and that generates energy. We use them all the time. We just don't know we're using them. You have a gas stove and you turn it on, it goes tick, tick, tick. There's a piezo crystal in there, and there's a hammer that hits it, and it creates a spark, and it goes out and lights the gas. Well, we have that in our head, and it creates energy, and that energy flows down and out. But if we close the pelvic floor, when it goes down, it comes right back up through the spine, right into the brain, and we have a brain orgasm instead of a regular orgasm. But
and
these are all manual things that we do, and we don't realize that we're doing them because we're not told that.
Yeah, and that's very ironic that you actually mentioned the word orgasm because actually
Yeah.
there's lots of evidence that when a man excessively or even just normally orgasms, when you release, you are releasing some of that fluid that's very
Yes.
connected to also your spinal fluid, and that it can deplete your resources.
Yes.
Think of it. Sperm is life, and sperm has
hmm
nutrients, and especially zinc. You lose lots of zinc whenever you release, and so that's why it's very important to do that in a very intentional manner, and to learn how to retain that when you're not having a special moment with a partner, or and things like that, because sometimes we can have a tendency to chase those feelings of release in that way, but when really you think about it, it's overly depleting the male body unnecessarily, because you're just depleting your nutrients in that way, when your body's kind of thinking it's giving those nutrients for creation of a new life in a way. And so there's lots of
Right.
information where they talk about how that can be beneficial in ways that and I've even noticed it in my own life. I've experimented with it a lot, and I definitely feel less depleted feeling when you don't do
hmm
that, and so it does make a difference. Yeah.
And the other thing about that is when you close the pelvic floor and it comes back up and goes into the brain, you don't lose that fluid. You give life to yourself.
That's
Because
right.
if it'll
That's right.
give life going out, it'll give life coming back. And that's what we're doing. We're retaining it, but we're giving it to ourselves instead of someone else, or just, you know,
That's right. Well, also,
wasting
I've
it.
also heard a man should learn how to practice the Kegel exercises for his prostate, because that will help to keep your prostate in better function, and it'll help to keep that pelvic
Mhm.
floor strong, and it'll help you to be able to flex
Yeah.
that fluid as well easier. You know, and that's it's the same
Yeah.
sensation of, for all the people that don't know what we're talking about. It's the same sensation that you flex when you're like trying to squeeze off the last one, you know, when you go into the bathroom, you know.
Yeah.
But that's really the only way I could explain it, you know. But when you flex that muscle and you flex it and you hold it, that's your flexing the pelvic muscle and the floor there. And then when you can flex it multiple times like you're doing exercise, but then you want to practice trying to hold it, you know, like flex it and then hold it. And you can even do this like when you're just driving down the road, you're just sitting randomly in different places, you know, and that's just a good practice for that area, and it helps to increase the blood flow and the activity of circulation. So that's real
Mhm.
good for a man's prostate as well, you know. So that's something that, you know, we should do, but also a woman should do that to tone her pelvic floor to help her vagina and everything, you know, or her whole vulva to stay in better function as well, you know. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
I
you
think
for your
is
insight,
that
guys. We're going completely off track. And yet it is still absolutely great information that we need to hear. So it's all okay.
Well, that's the way
yeah,
that
that
the information ebb and flows. You know, it
Yeah,
goes from
it's
one
true.
thing to the next because they're all
right.
connected. Everything's so connected, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? I was thinking about a title for this video, and I was like, okay, we got EFT, we got dry brushing, we got emotions, we got orgasms.
Uh,
Okay,
But
Michael,
it's
did you have anything else, or can we move on?
Oh, we can move on.
Okay.
Can I,
thank you, Michael.
Tony, can I actually
You're
chime in real
welcome.
quick with something short?
You can. We were waiting
Okay.
for you.
I was waiting. Also, don't forget the very important part of, I'm not sure if you're religious or not, but you know, the power of the daily prayer, like the Lord's Prayer,
Mhm.
and gaining strength through that. And you know, just strengthening everything with God and literally handing everything over to God. You know, I was told a long time ago by, I think it was Eckhart Tolle in one of his books, you just grab the
Mhm.
handle of the trolley car and you just go along. I'm a person too that carries a lot of fear and has control issues with, you know, like I'm a parent. My husband is a veteran who has PTSD and stuff. So I always try to control our environment. And through years, I've learned it's impossible to do. So
Mhm.
I have no idea what the fears are, but a lot of mine are very much irrational fears. And when I start doing my daily prayers and I hand everything over to God, and I know that I'm already His, like it says it right in the very beginning, like you are mine, and He will protect you. And every time I try to get myself into that mindset, and I truly am one of the true believers of that, things start happening for me. And when fear arises, I just say, oh, I guess I'm being fearful today. And I'll even kind of make fun of myself sometimes. And it may sound stupid, but I'll be like, oh, are we afraid of this? Are we afraid of that? Or what is it today? And then, like, I just kind of make it silly and then I move on. And sometimes it's bigger than others, but you just take them as they come in stride. And I say it all the time, go for walks in the forest. Our trees are our friends, and they are there to help us, and they are much older and much wiser than we are. And do your Lord's Prayer or do a meditation, whatever you want to do. But make sure you're breathing and enjoying your time there, and realize all of this will pass in one way or another, and something good usually comes out on the other end of it. We just don't always know what it is until maybe a very much later time. So that's all I had to say.
Well, thank you, Sarah. That's very important to hear too.
Yeah,
And
those are great reminders, most certainly, you know. Yeah, I like to think of it when I say that is I like to say that I'm standing on the edge of a cliff and I let go and I fall backwards and I just surrender and trust that God will be there to grab me and, you know, protect my fall, you know, and it's just all about, you know, surrendering, because the more you surrender to God, you know, the more that he can help you, because that's kind of what he wants you to do in the first place, is come to him like a humble little child that's not, you know, being egotistical or act like you know it all, and just surrender yourself and say, you know, very humbly and very vulnerably, you know, that, hey, I need help and please help me. Because it's kind of like you have to invoke the power of asking, you know, and surrendering to receive the gift, you know, and so I'll leave it at that.
well, thank you, Ted. In the live chat, there was a comment that I would like to read from Steen Your Concrete. Louis L. Hayes suggests being willing to release the need for whatever it is we want to get rid of. The emotions that wreak the most havoc: criticism, anger, guilt, shame, bitterness, resentment. The mantra is, or the reverse thought, the highest thought, I love and I approve of myself. 5 minutes before you open your eyes, and 10 minutes out loud, eyes open. Repeat it 15 minutes. You don't believe it at first. A few days in, though, something definitely happens. When you wake up and before you open your eyes, that is, if you are mindful of it, I love and I approve of myself. So thank you, you know, for that comment. I have never tried it that way. I would have to read more about Louis Hayes, which is Louise Hayes, which is easy to do because you can find it on the internet. But thank you for the reminder. We have a few more questions, and one I actually found quite important, and that was about being on the 18th day of a 40-day grape cleanse. 3 days ago, my kidney started really hurting badly. I've been doing the castor oil packs and lots of lemon water. The pain in my kidneys is absolutely debilitating. Yesterday, my right kidney released and the pain was gone, but my left kidney is being very stubborn and the pain is intensified to a screaming pain. How can you stop this? So I would like to hear your comments on that, either Gary or Ted.
What I would say is, first, is there anything that your fear, because that's where fear lives, is in the kidneys. You're going to have to be really careful about how much fluid you're actually taking in. Dandelion, do you know if it's a male or a female? Although I guess it wouldn't matter with raspberry leaf.
Yeah, it's a male.
Okay. Raspberry leaf is a good one. But again, you're going to have to be careful how much fluid you take in, because your kidneys are already kind of in trouble. So giving them permission to open, obviously it's working because the right side, I believe, as you said, is opened, and that's good. So that sounds like that they weren't filtering properly. And that one opened and it's filtering. So now the left one is left. Tapping, just lightly tapping on your back. Breath work is extremely important for that. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, hold at the top, hold at the bottom. So you inhale and you hold, and then you exhale and you hold. You want to get that movement going, and you want to get that diaphragm going up and down, going for just very slow but nice walks out in nature. Grounding to the earth would be huge. But your liquids you're going to have to be careful with, and you want really powerful liquids. And you could get it through your fruit, grape fast, lemons. Lemons is one of the greatest cleaners in the world. So if you had a small glass of water with a little bit of lemon in it, that would be fantastic. So I think that's about all. Just if there's something that you fear, because fear lives in the kidneys, uh, I would really investigate that. EFT would help with that. Uh, I watched this movie with my friend Howard, and there was Kevin Costner played a psychiatrist, and he said, this was his daughter. He said, "I'm going to give you 3 years worth of psychology in 3 minutes or in 3 questions." He goes, the last one was, you need to be in control of powerful men, because I'm a powerful psychiatrist and you ended up rejecting me. So she came to a conclusion in the 3 things that he asked her. And at the end of it, he said, "It is amazing how fast you can help somebody get over something if you're not charging by the hour." Now, there's a mindset there, but not everyone that you go to is interested in helping you get well. And the current medical system is putting you on lifetime medications. And I saw somebody yesterday, he was on 7 lifetime medications. And when you're on 7 medications, whether they're lifetime or not, according to the medical system, you are on chemical life support. And the more they add, the more you are on chemical life support. Your body's actually being regulated by the chemicals. And that's a dangerous place to be. So I'll just leave it at that. I just thought it was interesting that how fast you could help somebody if you're not charging by the hour. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody that's charging by the hour feels that way. I mean, they want to help you get well, and it's going to take your body time to turn this around, but it will happen. Okay, that's it for me.
And what I could add shortly is, Toni, repeat the question and the information that you told us at the first.
What do you mean about what he did this last one?
Yeah, just repeat the first information that you read out to us.
18 days on a 40-day grape cleanse.
Okay.
And then you were saying something about first. You said something about it. Also said the first couple of days, or you said something about first is one kidney started bothering him, then a few days later the next kidney.
Okay, it was he is on day 18 of a 40-day grape cleanse. 3 days ago, kidney started to hurt really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Started doing the castor oil packs and lemon water. Pain is debilitating. Yesterday, my right kidney released and the pain was gone.
Okay. All right. Well,
But
see.
the left kidney is being stubborn and the pain is intensified.
Okay. Well, see, you can see how something shifted in his body and his body released whatever that was. And what comes to my mind is the question that I would have to ask that individual, because this is a perfect example that, in order to answer someone accurately, you have to know enough information, because the more you start to ask them questions about certain things, you start to get more information that could make you come up with a different response to your conclusion or your advice or your answer, because you didn't know that information previously. And so what I would ask the person, if they were standing before me or if they were on a chat room or anything, because this happens all the time in the Telegram group, and the guys, if you like to follow Dr. Morse and you want to talk with us, in the Dr. Morse official group, join us over in Telegram, because Telegram's getting popular, as anyone in the news has heard, because it's an uncensored platform. But what I'm saying is that I always ask those people, what were you eating and drinking in the last week, especially the last few days before you went on that great cleanse? Because sometimes it happens within the first 3 or 4 days or the first week, or sometimes it may happen on the second week. You never know when the body's going to release it. But the way that humans have a tendency to be is when they know, it's almost like when they set that intention, whether it's mentally or speaking it or like verbalizing it to family members or declaring it to yourself. Your subconscious hears that you're making that declaration. So subconsciously, we have a tendency to think, okay, well, I know I'm about to do a 40-day cleanse, so I want to eat this or I want to do this, before I go on this 40-day cleanse, because I'm not going to get to have anything else but grapes for 40 days. And so sometimes people have a tendency to eat some heavy foods before they go on the cleanse. And I ask people all the time, what was it that you ate right before it? And some people, they've even eaten animal products. Some people have eaten heavy proteins, even nuts and seeds, and just heavier foods. And especially if you've eaten any kind of heavy proteins. And the heavier the proteins are, that is going to make the kidneys release that stagnation of pollution and those proteins when you're doing a astringent fruit detox, which grapes are. It's very pooling, it's very astringent, it's very, pulling on the tissue, so it's very aggressive. So that's what could happen. But also, if the person was a big consumer of coffee and sodas and acidic drinks, because that can really affect the kidneys, and does the person have a history of having sciatica or kidney stones? Because that's also a sign that they could be having that release or that flushing effect from the body and showing that they have a genetically weak kidney. That's where understanding iridology helps as well, because you can look at the genetics of the strength of the adrenals and the kidneys. And then that also goes back to the adrenals functioning, helping so much to function the kidneys properly, in the whole glandular system. You have to look at the energetics of the fear, the anxiety, the stress, the things that can make the adrenals weak, which can make the kidneys, weak too. So these things are all tied in together. So see, really in this situation, we would need more information, I feel like, to be able to answer it more accurately, because there's so many variables from person to person and situation to situation. So that's how I would kind of answer it, because I kind of feel my intuition from the words that he said. Because when you can only go by just the words they say, you have to really analyze how they structure their sentences, how they put the words together, and you can almost feel the emotions coming out of the way that they structured that sentence together. And you can feel the energy behind his words, and where he was saying that he really feels like that this is coming up all of a sudden, and that his body is kind of releasing this, quickly, because of how strong the grapes are. So another thing that comes to my intuition is that if he feels like, he can't maintain it where he's at and he can't keep pushing forward, then I would tell him to, take a momentary break for a day or two just to find stability, and go to the less aggressive fruits. Don't drop off and not eat fruits only. I'm just saying eat the less aggressive ones, like, or drink some a less aggressive fruit and vegetable juice or something, and just help the body to kind of relax for just a moment, and then you can go back to just the grapes, or you can only do the other option, which is to keep pressing forward and see what comes next. But you have to be prepared that, it can get more intense before it gets better, because that's the way the body works whenever it's trying to like release that stagnation, and that build up, then that can happen, is that that's the way the body can go through that process. So that's how I would answer that question, and we can move forward.
Yeah, I think that much pain, it is possible that a kidney stone could be involved. So we have to be careful with that. And absolutely, the first question I always ask the first question I always ask when somebody puts a question in any of the groups is, what is your diet? What exactly were you eating? And I'm sometimes pretty amazed, actually, to what answers I do get, and that people do feel that they are actually eating very healthy. And I've made that mistake, you know. We have another question: is what is a good diet to regenerate joints? I'm quiet. Go ahead,
I'll
guys.
say fruit. Fruit. Fruit, berries, and melons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, but you know, it is regenerating joints. It's I would definitely go on the of course, the detox protocol. It's always where we actually start. No, I'm kind of curious, Gary, because you always have you know, we already realized that healing starts with breathing the correct way, but now we're
Yes.
talking about regenerating joints. And
Right.
my and I have to tell you guys something. Before I learned about Dr. Morse, I had already really bad psoriasis. I had arthritis, what do they call that? Psoriatic, psor- I don't even know how to pronounce it. Arthritis. And that started to deform my joints,
Mm-hmm.
elbows, toes, fingers.
Yep.
And it's okay, you know. It's like with the right diet, the pain is gone,
Mm-hmm.
but I still have to see my fingers in a normal position. So that would be actually, how do you regenerate that? Now, I think this also has a lot to do with a very weak parathyroid throughout my life, and so I am aware of that.
So arthritis, any type of thing like that, itis, acid, dehydration. So that's why the fruits take the pain away, but it takes movement too. So one of the simple things that we do in Qigong, I mean, we're rebuilding people's joints all the time. We're not, the movement is. And then you add good hydration from fruits, berries, melons, vegetables, the master cleanse. Uh, those will start to rehydrate the joints as you move. One of the hand movements we do is just this simple, and then wrists, elbows, okay, and we work right through shoulders, twisting. Something that we hardly ever do is twist. We're so limited in our movements because everything is right there for us. When we lived in nature, you had to do everything. I mean, nature didn't just hand it to you. You had to reach to pick it off the tree or from the ground, and you were working, and the fruits, berries, melons, and the veggies, or not so much the veggies, but they were wild, and they weren't domesticated like the stuff that we have today. And domestication causes weakness. I mean, that's just the simple truth. We're in a certain temperature, and we don't want to vary from that. But when we were out in nature, you know, we was in the cold, we were in the heat, so collagen is another big one. And to increase collagen in the body, you just pinch the edge of your jaw, top and bottom, and this will help produce collagen. Not to get lost in the science of, by the time you're 30 years old, your body will stop producing collagen, or it'll slow down. Well, if you believe that, it will, because you're creating your life as you're moving along. You're manifesting it into reality. As Thad said earlier, what you speak comes back to you. So if your story is my joints are falling apart, that's what's going to come back to you. But just a simple switch in that. My joints may be suffering right now, but I'm eating fruits, berries, melons to help them heal. And in that simple little switch to help them heal, they get stronger. They have less pain. They have the ability for me to travel further without that pain. I mean, it's all in our story, all of it. And that's why the media is doing what they're doing right now, because it's putting people in fear. And when you're in fear, you're not processing properly. You can't think right. Your breathing changes, your shallow breath just through the mouth back and forth. So you're not getting oxygen down to the bottom of the lungs. So there's a no supply or a limited supply as it gets worse of proper hydration, nutrition, and oxygen going to the joint. So the cartilage start to deteriorate. Well, if it can deteriorate, then it can regenerate. So as we're adding these important things from the fruits, the berries, the melons, the vegetables, the liquids, then we're helping our body heal. But we have to have a good story to go with that. And that goes back to prayer. It goes back to putting your energy in your drink. And staying on the positive side of life, even though negative's happening all the way around us. The weird thing about negative or the news or the media is they're like a tornado. And if you're grounded, you're standing in the middle. But if you stick your hand out and your finger touches it, a lot of times they'll suck you into it so far that you'll lose your way and you'll become ungrounded. And in a state of ungroundedness, we become confused. And we're not digesting our food properly. So we end up being what they call sick. I call it dis-ease within the body. There is no disease. There's only dis-ease. And it's manifested in the same way, even though we're told it's different. You can't have over 22,000 listed diseases. And only 7 things that the body needs: proper hydration, nutrition, oxygen, movement, which we get way too much of, rest. And our rest isn't really rest. When we talk about rest, we talk about, well, I went to sleep last night, but I'm more tired now when I woke up than I was when I went to bed. That's not rest. So to give the body what it needs is just light movement. Because we have exercise in the head, and exercise takes energy. Qigong produces more energy than it uses. And there's an energy that created matter. And if there's something that's an issue with the matter, movement, slow movement, and breath will regenerate it, because it'll open the tissue back up and it will allow it to absorb, to digest properly. The whole digestive system, okay, comes out of the stomach really acidic. And what the intestinal system does actually is it alkalizes it on the way through, so you can eliminate it so that it won't burn you. And that has a lot to do with your joints. Getting these 6 lymphatic gates open, because the lymphatic system is the acid side of the body. So if that stops, then it starts to build and it goes to these gates again. Okay. So if you have a block somewhere, it's going to go to the weakest point, that acid, and it's going to start burning it. And you're going to start having depletion in tissue or cartilage or whatever it is. And if it can degenerate, it can regenerate. And that's what we have to remember, is that we are the power of the universe. And we can change anything we want. But first, all we need to do is change our story. In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word said, "Let there be light." That means it's more powerful. Words are more powerful than light. So we're speaking the light and darkness into our life every day, simply by the words we choose and the intention that we put on those words. Anger will destroy a body. So, okay, that's where I'm going to end right there.
Thank you, Gary. That was very interesting.
Yeah, and I'll keep it short myself, and we can move on as well. Is that I would add is that, yes, and when I think of people having joint discomfort and pain, is that, yes, Gary covered it very well with the emotional and spiritual and mental components of it all. But I would say with the physical again, is that, be aware of, sometimes the body has a tendency to crystallize acids, especially uric acid,
Mhm.
and uric acid can be very detrimental to the joints. And when it crystallizes, it's kind of like a sand spur. It kind of sends out needles, from the crystals that can impregnate the tissues. And then when you move the joints, it hurts. That's why when people get gout, it hurts in their toe and their thumb
Mhm.
and their fingers. And when I think of that, I think of it's just your body's oversaturated, it's over congested with that buildup of acids. And the more you can
Mhm.
do things to help that to be neutralized and then released, then you'll start to notice it'll dissolve away, and then you'll start to feel, so much more fluid, and you won't really feel your joints. You won't really feel yourself walking around and moving. Everything will be just so fluid and so easy to move. But I think, the joints and the soft tissues have a tendency to ache and have pain the most when you have acid congestion, because even like
Mhm.
fibromyalgia and lupus, but especially fibromyalgia, that's just soft tissue arthritis. And that's from the congestion of acids in those tissues that's making someone have a deep body ache and pain in that area. So really just think of it as that is a sign from your body, like the lights on the dashboard of your vehicle, that something needs service, something needs attention, something needs repair. And then when you give it what the body needs again, then you're going to help, by cause and effect, you're going to help that to start to be broken up and dissolved and released. And so that's kind of what you're doing when you're going through that, because I think of it as the more serious that the condition is left, it will get more serious, and it will start to get more, kind of like more concentrated and more aggressive on the body. And then the more that you leave those acids in that area to do damage, it can
Mhm.
cause more further problems. So it's kind of like, you have to understand how the body's trying to communicate with you. Because once you learn how the body's trying to communicate with you, and you start to listen to your body, not ignore it, not just think, oh, that's just normal, that's just part of being a human. If you don't, just ignore it and just put it off as normal, and you start to say, okay, well, my body's communicating to me, so now I need to figure out what I need to do about it. The sooner you can do that after your body's communicating to you, the easier it will be to resolve that issue. So just keep that in mind. So kind of take it as a moment where you're like, okay, I'm getting feedback, so now I need to do something about it. I don't need to ignore it, because the more you put it off, the more chronic and more worse it can get. Yeah, that's all I could add. Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to add one thing, because this is extremely important. You can breathe anywhere in your body, because energy flows where attention goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you have the intention, let's say it's a wrist or a knee that you're having an issue with, you can breathe in through your nose. And as long as your attention is on that wrist and healing it, it will send energy to that to heal it. And that's something that most people, I don't know if they don't know it, but I don't think they're doing it. So you breathe in through the nose with this in mind. You can breathe right into your heart to heal your heart anywhere in the body. Uh, I had a industrial accident here not too long ago, and I don't know if I talked about this on here, but this finger right here, it cut that fingernail right in half.
Wow.
Okay, and there's nothing on it, nothing. It's And all I did was, and I'm not saying anybody else should do this, but is peroxide and vitamin E oil, and I changed the bandages twice a day. Now it got all 10 fingers. The weird part is it was the ring fingers on both hands that got that got it worse. So not sure what that's trying to tell me, but maybe I'll figure it out in the future. But yeah, I got my hands and I got my body. So after uh, the shock and going rinsing it off, I thought about just cutting it off. And I said, you know what? I'm going to just, because going back to Joe Dispenza and how he healed his back, I pushed it back together. It was still bleeding. And I went in and I did a 15-minute meditation and breathwork session, sending energy to that finger to heal that. And within just a few weeks, no drugs, no doctors, no nothing, that came back and there's nothing there. And I have pictures of it for those that might be interested in such things. But there's nothing. There's not a scar. There's nothing there. And that's how powerful we are. We are able to heal our own bodies. And we can do it through our breath, through hydration, through fruits, berries, melons, vegetables. And that's why they're doing what they're doing to them. But we're designed to handle toxins. It's that when we get overloaded, that's when we start to have an issue because it can't get out. And keeping those 6 gates open is extremely important, especially if you're doing dry brush work. So, okay, so I'm going to end it right there. Who's next?
And I was going to add to what Gary said, because when Gary said that, it brought up a memory in my brain that confirmed what he said to be very true. Is that I remember reading Wim Hof's book, that he wrote with, or where he co-wrote it with another guy that came to visit him and wanted to learn from Wim Hof about his breathing studies and his cold plunge, principles. And Wim Hof, he learned from the Buddhist monks on how to do tumo, I think they call it. It's a certain type of meditation where they learn how to raise the temperature and how to control their temperature in their body aggressively. I mean, so aggressively that there's actually videos of them sitting in the snow, and they take an ice cold sheet and they put it around their body and they sit there and they practice raising their body temperature till you see steam coming off of the sheet, off of their body, until eventually the sheet is dry. And it's just their body, them learning how to control their temperature. And they did that because, they practice meditation so much in those cold climates over there. But Wim Hof, he learned how to do that so well that that's why he could be submerged up to his neck in ice, and he doesn't get frostbite after hours of being into it, because he moves the circulation around in the body and the temperature in his body to the different areas where he'll start to feel like he's getting frostbite. And that's how he was actually able, no joke, he was actually able to climb all the way past the death zone in Mount Everest with just shorts on and no boots, no socks, no nothing. And then he made it almost to the top, but then he had to stop because he couldn't control his foot from getting too much frostbite, and he was worried about losing it. And so he turned back, but he almost literally made it to the top of Mount Everest with just shorts on, and learning how to control his breath and learning how to control the body temperature. And then he went to, people said, "Oh, you're just a freak. You can just do that with cold." He said, "No, I can go to the desert and do the same principle," because he learned how to control his body. They even hooked him up scientifically at a medical lab in Netherlands and gave him a certain type of bacteria. And he went into a meditation and deep breathing, and he kept the bacteria from hurting his body and causing him to get the common cold or the flu, which was what most normal people would get. All it did to him was give him a slight headache. And they said, "Well, again, you're just a freak. It's only you that can do it." He said, "No, I can bring you back 10 people and I can train them for just 2 weeks and they can do the same thing." And he did it, and he proved it, and they were able to do it as well. So it just goes to show it's all about how you learn how to use the body. But the last thing I'll mention in the story is that the guy that was writing the book with him, when he came to see Wim Hof, he had a heat gun, a laser heat gun with him. And he said, "Wim, I want you to do an experiment. Lay your hand on the table, and I want you to tell your body to send energy to your hand to heat up your hand on the table." And he got the readings of his hand before he started, and then he kept the gun on there. And as Wim was doing the practice, you could see the temperature, he said, raising more and more and more in the heat of the gun, and you could, that that kind of visually confirmed through technology that what Wim was doing was not just some charlatan or some quackery thing, you know, because for the longest time in Wim's life, that's what they just thought he was a snake oil salesman or just like a
Mhm.
sideshow performer. You know, they didn't think could really do what he did until he literally had science prove that what he was doing was true, you know. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add because I find it very fascinating that this is the
Yeah.
human potential that our bodies have. We just have to know how to do these things. And then not only know how to do it, you have to practice it. But see, it took Wim coming to the realization of facing death because his wife had committed suicide and left him with only his children, and he was in such severe darkness that the cold called him because the cold is so alkaline that that's the doorway to letting yourself be resolved of those dark emotions. Because he said he felt so at peace in the cold because it helped him to go into those emotions and process them better and be able to let them go and surrender, you know. And see, that's sometimes why people they hate the cold or they refuse the cold, and that's also why it makes your joints and things hurt because it's bringing up those acid stagnation again, you know, just like it's bringing out a cold and flu like symptom, you know.
Mhm.
And it's just, and also asthmatic symptoms because they have weak lungs because they haven't been practicing breathing properly, or they've had a history of being asthmatic or something, you know. And so it's very interesting how the body responds and how the body acts and how we can help to train it and help it to function in certain ways. We just have to know how to use it properly, you know. And these are things that are just not taught to us, you know, from young ages because sometimes it takes, you know, decades of practice, you know, just like Gary here telling us about how he wasn't able to really learn and see the true benefits of the tapping until after all the years of practicing it, you know. And that's the way it goes for a lot of people, you know, is it takes repetition to be able to become a master.
Mhm. Yeah,
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
for those that don't know, Wim Hof is all over YouTube. So if you want to learn about him, uh, just don't do his breath work while you're. The best place to do it is laying down when you're, you probably not alone either, but because it's a
Yeah.
very, very, very powerful
Yeah,
breath
and you what
experience.
sorry to interrupt you, but what you said
Yeah.
is very, very, very true. And I'm glad we're giving that caution because there's been actually some cases where people passed out while they were trying to do it in the water while they were doing the ice bath at the same time. And that's a big no-no. There's actually been some
Yeah.
people that actually they drowned, they passed away, and that's kind of tarnished, you know, Wim's name and Wim's practice, you know, and made people kind of scared of it and stuff. When no, it's not that. It's just you have to understand that when you do the deep breathing exercises, you can semi hyperventilate, you know, because that's
Hmm.
kind of what you're doing because you're forcing your body in a way to hyperventilate because you're exchanging the in and out breath so much. But what that's doing is that's helping your lungs to become stronger, and it's kind of like an exercise for your lungs, you know. But again, if you can get too aggressive with it, and depending on your nervous system state and all these different factors, you know, sometimes that can happen. You can pass out temporarily. And so that's why, like he said, just make sure you're laying down and you're not doing it while you're in the water, you know. Yeah. And you're driving.
Yeah. When I do my cold plunges and I share with people, I always tell them, don't be doing breath work in the water. Your breath is going to shift and your body's going to shift. And that's all you need to do is just get in. When you get in, the first breath is kind of like, because you're in the cold water. Then relax. Just let your breath relax. Your breath
Yeah.
is the key to so much stuff. So, uh, and even my other breath work, I always share with people, don't do it driving or riding a bicycle or even regular breath work, because you're manually taking over an automatic thing. But breathing through the nose is something a lot of people don't do, and a lot of people can't breathe through their nose. Uh, so that's where the Wim Hof is so important, is you can still have great results breathing through your mouth, but it is really, I mean, I've done it. You do 5 rounds of 30 breaths as fast as you can. it can, it affects you. Let's put it that way. And there's videos of Wim on there. and people having uh they're having experiences, and he's helping them get back. uh so, and the other thing is, you can't be afraid of it, you know. The medical system, not to be picking on them, but they don't even talk about breath. And then when you go in the hospital and you're not breathing properly, they give you this thing to blow on or suck on or whatever it is, and it's got a little bunch of balls in it, right? And their story is, you're going to be on this for the rest of your life, and this, and I don't really want to get into all that crap, but you're watching these things and they go up, right? And you don't have any breath. They're not teaching you to breathe. They're showing you every day why they're right, because your breath can get a little weaker every day. See, now this is what's going to happen, and they're just talking you off the planet. That's basically in my experience. Although they have saved my life, and I know other lives that they've saved, but that's I give my body credit for that, not me personally, and not them personally. They've taken my son's life, my mom, my dad, my sister. So yeah. So this is what got me on this path. And I've been on this path for a long time, and I'm very passionate about helping people. And that's why I'm so honored to be here.
Yeah, well, my heart goes out to you, Gary, when, having to live that life, but sometimes that's what it takes for us to, to be in these positions of being motivated and inspired to help people at such high levels, and I was going to say, when you were saying all that, my intuition and my sense of empathy about the whole subject, it brought up the thought pattern that, have you guys in the world, have you noticed that the more conscious humanity gets, the more the dark forces, or the powers that should not be, as
Mm-hmm.
Patty Lager likes to say, they want to do even more things to suppress our breath. They want to do
Mm-hmm.
more things to hurt our lungs. That's why they coming out with all these pandemics about, lung suppression illnesses and respiratory suppression illnesses. And then when you go to the doctor, and go to these medical associations, they put you on these ventilators that are totally bad on your lungs and all those things too, because they know the more you master the breath and you help the breath and you breathe into the breath and you learn about the breath, you breathe more life into you, and you also become more consciously aware, and you become less
Mm-hmm.
fearful, because all of that fear is very detrimental to your breath, because it makes you shallow breathe, because you lose the conscious awareness on just being able to go, just that deep sigh, that ability just to let it go. They want you to just sit there in so much panic and fear and tension that
Mm-hmm.
you're just so tense that you cannot even let go of that
Mm-hmm.
breath that you're feeling, and see where Wim Hof becomes so powerful. And the reason why people pass out is because it's not just the breathing in and out, it's the retaining of the breath, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what I noticed when I practiced it, is that when you retain the breath, especially on holding the lungs without air, even sometimes more than with air, because
Mm-hmm.
that can kind of be panicking for people, because they think, oh, I'm suffocating because I don't have any air in my lungs. But what I've noticed is that he also tells you to, when you hold the breath, to squeeze the body. And when you
Mm-hmm.
squeeze the body, not only you're concentrating the breath in your body, but you're concentrating the pressure. Okay, what does that do? That puts more expansion on your lungs, and that puts more expansion on your blood flow, and that sends
Mm-hmm.
more blood flow to the mitochondria of the cells. It helps everything to work more, better. But that's where people can pass out from, is because you're not only retaining the breath and holding the breath, but you're also squeezing that pressure. And
Mm-hmm.
And there's been times that I've came close to feeling like I was going to pass out as well, but whenever I released it, went away. But I'm saying you definitely, when you get into it and you experience it and you understand, you can see the power in it. You can see why, the dark forces and the people don't like it, because, and that's why you come to the conclusion, like any of us that have practiced breath enough, you come to the conclusion that, breath work is actually more important than your food and your drink. And that's because you can live less time from no breath and lack of a good oxygen than you can from drinking water or eating food. And so that's why also breath is life, and so that's why, we have to look at all of those factors, and we have to understand that that's why they don't like, all these things that talk about and educate us on how to do these things, is because that counter goes against, because you're not going to have respiratory issues if you practice deep breathing, because you're
Right.
constantly you're exercising that muscle and keeping that area strong and resilient, and you're also helping the lungs to detoxify because you're bringing so much fresh air in there. And yes, Gary is right. At first, when you first start, if your body's not used to it and your lungs aren't very strong in capacity and your nasal passage is not really used to having that much airflow in between them, and in and out of them, then you do have to start with the mouth first. And then the more you get used to it, then you can start to do it in and out the nose. And that's kind of really good, because it's more aggressive and more powerful in and out of the nose versus in and out of the mouth.
Yeah.
So you have to start first with the mouth and then work up to the nose. But the nose is where the true miracles happen, because that's where you're creating the nitric oxide, like we've talked about before,
Mhm.
in and out. And that's also where it's going more up into the brain stimulation, because that's also where the yogis and the India people talk about the panorama. I can't remember pronounce it because it's an Indian word, but it's where they hold one nasal passage closed, they breathe in the right
Yes.
nasal passage, and then they release it out the left nasal passage, and then they hold the right nasal passage, they breathe back in the left nasal passage, and then they keep alternating. And they say when you alternate the nasal breathing in that way from their Indian practice, they say that helps to balance the right and left hemispheres of the brain. And that's very
Mhm.
important as well for psychological, mental, emotional, because we need a proper communication between the right and left hemispheres of the brain, and then of
Right.
course that's also helping that the circulation and the intention, because you also put one of your fingers, you put like your left thumb on your left nasal passage, and then you put like your ring finger on your third eye, and you hold it there, and that's kind of like connecting to your pineal while you're holding your nasal passage, and then you alternate it and do it with the other hand. You hold your thumb and then your ring finger on your third eye area, of your forehead, and so these are all different techniques, and we encourage people, and I know Gary will confirm that this is true, is that we encourage people to play
Right.
around with these things and to experiment with these things for yourself,
Mhm.
because you'll never know if you practice the deep breathing and do different practices. You practice the EMT, you practice these different techniques, you'll find your body will respond to you and let you know what it really likes, because, it's kind of like everything else. You don't really know what it's going to be like until you get in there and start trying it out for yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the interesting things about the nasal passages is we have erectile cells in our nose,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
and about every half hour or so, I'm sure it's different with every person because we're all different, even though we're the same. Uh, one side will start to close down and the other one will open, and then this one will close down and this side will open. Well, that's kind of like what you're doing, only you're doing it manually. You're overriding the natural flow of that, and just crossing just this right here. You're crossing the barrier between the left and right brain. So all movement where you go from here, this is this side of the brain, and when you cross this line, it goes to this side of the brain. So that helps the brain uh, communicate better with the left and right side, also, especially with people that are dyslexic.
Yeah, that's why I love talking about these things. Because see, and that's why, Tony, we never know where the conversation is going to go, because we really in our minds we don't really know what we're going to talk about until we start talking about
Right.
it. Because, and that's the same way you see Dr. Morse, the way he works, is because it's kind of like you just have to let things flow. That's why he loves to let
Right.
people ask him questions so much. Anytime you went to any of his live intensives, he would love for people to ask him questions, because that would
Mhm.
just start the conversation going in the different directions that it divinely needs to flow into, because sometimes, the best way to give a presentation is not having an outline at all, because you kind of need to go into it with the way that it comes about, because it's kind of like the more you do that, you're channeling the divine and what the divine wants you to talk about in that moment, because he may have some energetic beings or humans that are listening to you that need you to say that particular thing that you said that they needed to hear, that you didn't know you needed to say, but something told you and something brought you to say that, and then that helps the person get that information that they need. So
Mhm.
that's why I always love these kind of conversations, because it goes into just different areas of life that is things that people don't talk about enough. And that's why that they can seem so strange and so woo woo and so out there and so hippy dippy and all these words that people have always used. But that's only because it's unknown to people. They question things that aren't common. You'll hear people all the time that are just your standard people. They'll say, "Oh, well, if these things were so important, why aren't they taught in school?" And then you can clearly tell that that person doesn't understand that that information was
Mhm.
suppressed on purpose. It's not just some conspiracy theory, some woo-woo stuff that isn't really, it's like fakery or not really true. No, it's actually, the irony is the opposite. It's so powerful and so true that they don't want you to know about it, and it is not trying to be like secretive and conspiracy about it. It's just that it sometimes the things that they want you to not choose are the things that you should choose. And that's why you hear that all the time in the songs. Like Bob Marley said it himself, the stone that you refuse is the stone that you should have used, and then that was the name of the song, is the head cornerstone. He talks about the stone builder, and that sometimes, is the way it is. The things that you reject, or sometimes the things that your body's calling you to accept, and now, not always. I'm not saying if you're rejecting doing bad things that you need to do that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying sometimes, we have a tendency to reject the things that our body's calling us to do. Yeah.
Thank you. That we got to close it up. Sarah already had to leave because for her son, school is back, so she had to leave us already. And well, we again had a wonderful podcast with a ton of information. What you mentioned about just see what topic we end up with. I did that for years with Sarah. We never knew what we were going to talk about. But I do see the value of having certain topics so people can relate to it. But it's interesting what you said. There may be someone on that listening to that podcast and you saying exactly what that person need to hear. And I often have gotten responses just like that. That a person said, I was listening for the first time and it was exactly what I needed. So
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
and it is still happening. I mean, we have a question about regenerate joints, and half an hour later, it went into so many different
Yeah.
things.
Well, I hear it all the time from people. People will say, I don't know why it was, but for some reason I was able to listen to you at that moment when I just happened to have a break. Or people will come into my parents' store and they'll say, I don't know, for some reason something told me to come by today and see if you guys had a particular item. And then they didn't realize that, no, they were really sent there to talk to someone about these issues and hear some information that they didn't know they needed to hear, and
Yeah.
and so that's sometimes the way the divine works, again, is it moves you effortlessly into the path that you need to take if you don't resist the flow of the divine, you know, because, you know, that's the thing, is that a lot of times if we're not aware and we're not able to see the directions that it's guiding us and the reason why it's guiding you in that direction, then sometimes you can resist, you know, and what you resist will persist, because you'll keep repeating those same patterns, because it's trying to get you to go down that path, because that's your next spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, human experience that you need to experience to progress in your human involvement, you know, or progression as a human, you know. And sometimes we're talking about fear earlier, and I love how the conversations can tie back into it, is that fear is what sometimes stops people from doing that, is that they'll feel so scared to let themselves go to that next path of that next story, because they don't want to face that growth, you know, they don't want to face those challenges, but they don't realize that the thing you're fearing is the thing that you need, you know, again. And so, and that's again why they promote fear so strongly on us all, and make us feel like we don't have a chance or an opportunity to have, you know, positive things happen in our life, because the more you dwell on that, the more you attract that. Like Gary was saying, the more you dwell on it, the more you identify with it, the more it becomes your identity. You know, that's why you hear people all the time. I even hear people in the store, they'll come in and they identify so strongly with their condition that you have to remind them that no, you're not just a person that has MS, or you're not just a person that has diabetes and that's your whole identity. That's just what you've made it to be, because those symptoms are so strong in your life. You know, you are an individual. Excuse me, you are an individual or a soul or a being that's outside of that limitations of the body. You know, it's just, and Dr. Morse has even said it many times too, that the people forget that they have consciousness behind the human experience, you know. And that's all I'll say, because I know you're trying to close it out, Tony, because, you know, sometimes when these conversations get going, they get so good and they get going so well that it's like, it's hard to stop, only because, you know, the conversation is going in such a positive direction, you know. Yeah, yeah. It's hard
Yeah.
to stop the flow once you get the flow going, you know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dad and Gary. Much love to you, and
Yeah, you too.
love for Sarah.
Yes, you too.
And you guys are up for it next week. We'll do it again.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, I enjoy chatting with you guys. It's always something to
Yeah,
look forward to. You know,
Okay.
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thank you. And I would say till the next time. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
See you later, everybody.